Bring in Glinis Buffalo. She is the owner and president of Glinis Buffalo Consulting, an Indigenous-led land use planning agency. Glinis, appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
What do you make of what we just heard there from these chiefs?
So there was a lot of consistent concerns that I've heard in other past meetings. So it's nothing new in terms of it's not meaningful consultation. It's rushed. There's a pre-selected group of at this advisory council to speak. There was, in terms of the process, that it was approved first and then the summit was held. So that's not a good, I guess, step. Right, we just elected the Carney government, and now this is the first, the first implementation with nations. Right, so it's not creating that the dialogue for people to talk, right? And so I heard a lot of one-sided comments that there isn't opportunity for nations to even have that time to just dialogue. And when there's conflicts and tensions, that's what creates conflict, is that when you don't have that adequate time to talk through it and have the resources to be able to go back, talk to who your tribe is, your nation, come up with some sort of an approach, not necessarily the solution, because that's what I also think is part of I hear is that there's lots of room for people to come up with an approach on how to engage with each other. And I heard a lot of comments regarding it's not reflective of a treaty-based relationship and engagement. So these are really consistent concerns, putting environmental principles not at equal with resource development. So these are so it's pretty consistent with a lot of things that, a lot of comments I've heard.
What do you make of the argument that the Prime Minister is making that we are in this crisis because of the trade war with the United States, that the economy is in trouble for all Canadians, Indigenous, non-Indigenous Canadians, and that they need this kind of legislation, and that it is the beginning of engagement with First Nations leaders?
Well, in terms of, when you think of a nation, a town, a city, right, there's always concerns about economic leakage, right? So then how do we, if economic leakage is happening, what can we do to promote our own trade with each other and trade with our partners and who's in the region, and how do we get partnership with international, at the international market? So with this, I listening to some of the comments, I do see, I know there was reference to future summits, and I think there's a big opportunity to be able to plan that. What does that look like together? Because it's the huge concern of this isn't meaningful, and so I think there's lots of for that. So we can, all these concerns that are coming out, we need to fast track these national interest projects in the interest of all Canadians without consent of Indigenous groups. I think there's opportunity to be able to work through those, and with a proper consultation, right? It's about having that dialogue and even just that safe space to be able to understand what the issue is. And to my knowledge, I don't know if there's been a Canadian government who has taken the time to visit each nation, right? That's always been a request, is that then they're meeting collectively, and then there's the concern is that you can't speak for a nation when they're sovereign. So it could be a legacy that there's an opportunity for the Carney government to test that and to test, because right now we don't have facts, we don't have evidence that it hasn't been tested to see and create some sort of process out of that.
And then just finally, where do you think the conversation needs to go next on all of this in terms of making sure that there is proper consultation and full engagement?
So there's lots of I think that there's a lot of jumping to the outcome, the solution, the conflict, right? Like there's a lot of that I'm hearing, and so I think if there's opportunity for people to hold that dialogue and work through those issues in terms of they like what is a treaty-based establishing what that means, treaty-based relationship. Opportunity for the nations to put forward their regulatory process, because to me there's a lot of one-sidedness in terms of Canada's approach. So if there's room for nations to put forward and have the resources to be able to come up with their consultation in terms of if this is my if you're gonna take trees, if you're gonna do forestry in my territory. How being very clear about how do I benefit, what's the both benefits, and rather than coming from this one-sided approaches.
Glinis, it was good to talk to you. Thank you. Glinis Buffalo.